I saw this AI Nazi shit. Apparently Donald Trump posted it to his Truth Social. It's all AI.
It's important to remember that borders aren't just lines on a map. Those invisible lines are the equivalent of having walls and doors in your home. Without them, anyone could just walk right in, eat your food, rearrange your furniture, even walk off with your stuff. Imagine the chaos. Your privacy is invaded, your belongings are up for grabs, and your entire sense of security is out the window. Borders define where our home ends and the next begins, ensuring that we can maintain order, manage our resources.
It's actually, in many parts in America, it's actually illegal to build mixed-use, walkable neighborhoods like this. Good thing a country isn't a house. Well, it's like, I feel like if you're in a position where you have to explain how this is wrong, you're talking to a person who should be grazing grass out in a field anyway. Like anyone who unironically thinks, oh yeah, the walls of my house are exactly like the giant thousands of miles long contiguous borders of a nation, which determine the jurisdiction of a state. That's exactly like my house, which is like walls that, you know, like a 50 feet by 50 feet or however large your house is, you know? Probably not 50 feet by 50 feet in this economy.
Can maintain order, manage our resources, and protect our culture. They tell others that here we do things our way. Without borders, we'd be in a world of chaos where nobody's safe to simply live in peace.
That's true, man. As everyone knows, the formation of the nation state and the borders that represent them led to an era of peace with no conflict. This is true.
They're the rules of the game, the boundaries that allow us to coexist without turning the whole world into a free-for-all where might...
Is this an official ad? Because this is unbelievably... This was posted by Donald Trump on Truth Social. Trump Daily Post just reposts stuff that Trump posts on Truth Social. Nazi AI slot.
Makes right, and the only rule is finders keepers.
Should I actually try to debunk this? I feel like I'm being lazy right now. Okay, let's try to actually debunk this. All right, we're gonna put some effort in. We're gonna put some effort in. Okay, we're gonna try our best. Okay, so obviously this is AI slop, blah blah blah. Let's engage with the substance of the argument because the script would have been written by a person.
It's important to remember that borders aren't just lines on a map. Those invisible lines are the equivalent of having walls and doors in your home.
So obviously not. Borders define the jurisdiction of the nation state, right? Or a state in general. A state has laws. The borders define where they can apply and enact those laws. Even then, that's not necessarily the case. It's kind of a simplification because a nation's laws can extend to people that are outside the borders of the country. You can be arrested for doing stuff overseas, even if you're only a citizen of America, and the stuff that you're doing is legal in the countries that you're doing it. Your citizenship precludes certain responsibilities. Likewise, you can be protected from certain crimes if you're overseas, even if you're not within the borders, based on the laws of those countries, right? It's basically just like an artificial and arbitrary designation of where a specific category of rules apply. Whereas the walls of your home are made of wood, drywall, probably like fiberglass insulation. You've got some copper wiring, some pipes in there. It's made of physical stuff. So actually it's very, very different to the like extremely complicated nation state, you know, jurisdictional boundaries that we're talking about. It's only the same in the sense of like, their areas, I suppose, or they designate areas. But if we're going to go by comparisons to that, you can go by anything. Like a home is like a park playground because that's also an area. A home is like a theater because a theater has walls. A nation state is like a Barbie house because they both have areas under they both follow the universal rule that if you describe a two-dimensional shape with a series of lines and curves, then you have like a surface area within the shape. Like, oh, what do you mean? Like everything's like everything then. Notably, by the way, a house, your walls do not describe where any laws begin or end, right? Because you have a house, that doesn't mean that you get to make your own laws. You still have to follow US laws if the house is in America. Notably, actually, you might not even own that house, right? A lot of people rent these days. So it doesn't necessarily confer ownership. It is literally just a physical implement that designates boundaries and keeps the elements out, you know? Pretty simple stuff, I think.
Without them, anyone could just walk right in, eat your food, rearrange your furniture, even walk off with your stuff.
So this is actually not true. The main thing that protects your house is law, not your walls. You will find that any reasonably healthy person can break your walls and your doors down with very minimal equipment. It doesn't take that much. The main thing that protects people's houses and the contents of those houses is law. The idea that if you get caught doing those things, you go to jail for a long time. I mean, it used to be, back in the olden days, people didn't have security systems. People didn't even like have law in the same way we do today. We don't have police in like 1492, right? Back in those days, people were mostly protected by social responsibility, the law of hospitality, and the idea that if you committed crimes against a member of, say, a village, and someone found out or got your appearance, they would just kill your ass, you know? It's social reciprocity. Reciprocity? I can never say that word correctly. It is the expectation of how others will treat you if you commit social harm. Reciprocity. That's a very unintuitive one for me. Reciprocity. Artemy, do you have opinions on how to pronounce words? But you can't even say words. All you can say is ow. Say ow. Ow. Good boy. Good boy. Obviously, having walls around your house is nice for protection, and I won't deny that their existence definitely deters lazier bandits from getting into your place. But for the most part, it's law that does that, you know. It's always been easy to break into doors and walls. Like it doesn't take much equipment to break into a house, right? It's social consequences. For the most part, walls originated as a thing to keep the elements out. You know? Also, we used to live a lot more communally. The idea of people in a close-knit village just like entering each other's homes as they needed to, or you might have one person whose house stored an object or items of some value and we used to live in a society that had a little bit like a higher level of trust because people in villages knew other people in those villages. This is a level of fear-mongering that's actually incompatible with the so-called good old days. The idea that like we could live in a high-trust society where people engage with each other communally is kind of incompatible with the belief that if it wasn't for walls, everyone would just steal your shit. Yeah, it's kind of silly, right? Like, if you think about it, like, I don't know. It's silly. I think we should strive for something a little bit better. Yeah, a lot of people in small town America don't even lock their door, you know?
Imagine the chaos.
Imagine the chaos. I like the imagine the chaos, and this shot is meant to represent, like, what the world would look like if houses had no walls, but all these houses do have walls. So it just kind of reinforces the idea that if chaos ever broke out, the walls and doors would not protect you. You know what I mean? Like, this just reaffirms the position that if social trust ever broke down entirely, the walls would do literally nothing to protect you, because of course people could just break in. Okay, guys, I get it. We're going to be saying walls a lot, so I'm just going to nuke walls. Because you're all being really annoying with it. Wow, really? Walls sounds like walls? It's almost like they sound exactly the same. Thank you for your really original observation. Can we just continue with this? All I hear is Tim Walls. Now, shut up. It's a common word, okay?
Your privacy is invaded. Your belongings are up for grabs.
That's none of this is true. First of all, if people want to invade your privacy, they can peek in your windows. If people want to grab your stuff, that's against the law anyway, even if you don't. Do you think that if you leave your door open or unlocked, people can just run in and take your stuff? What does this have to do with borders? The idea, like the emotional goal of this video is to make people afraid of what the world would be like if you had no way of keeping ne'er-do-wells out, and then to apply that fear to the idea of completely uncontrolled borders, right? But it's a senseless comparison that only makes sense if you're fearful, right? Like, the emotional argument is the only one that works there. There's not really any comparison here to be made. It's just, hey, you know what you're afraid of? Well, this is like that fear. And it's not. There's no relationship between these things, you know?
And your entire sense of security is out the window. Borders define where our home ends and the next begins.
They're not borders, though. Those are walls. And even then, walls don't determine where your home ends and another begins. Property lines do. A property line might be more comparable to a border in the sense that they're both arbitrary legal distinctions rather than literal physical boundaries that you can cross or break into or whatever. But those are different things. It's just a blurring of concepts. It's just a bunch of like nebulous, well, this is like that is like this is like that, you know? This is why I didn't want to like debunk this initially, because a lot of it's just yapping. There's not really a logical argument to tear into. There's not like a, hey, this is why I support X or Y immigration policy. The video hinges on the erroneous assumption that people outside your country's borders are more of a threat to you than ones inside of it. We'll get to that. We'll get to that. We haven't even gotten to the proper border comparisons.
Ensuring that we can maintain order, manage our resources, and protect our culture.
So, notably here, 1 second, okay? Borders define where one home ends and the next begins, ensuring we can maintain order. I'm sorry, do crimes not happen because people have walls in their house? What's the implication there? Did crime stop when we erected walls?
Manage our resources.
What does managing our resources have to do with the erecting of walls? Resources are extracted from the wilderness. What, like, again, this is one of those like borders versus house walls thing. What do you mean by this? Is the implication here that America's resources and laws can no longer be enforced when there are people inside America who came from outside America? How is that any different from newborns in America?
And protect our culture.
There's no such thing as protecting culture. Notice how when they say protect our culture, they show an image of something that doesn't even relate to the experience of most Americans these days. I'm sorry, how many Americans are going to like a little steeple church out in the middle of nowhere? Most Americans live in cities now. This culture is like doesn't exist anymore. This whole video is using an art style that is deliberately anachronistic because you're trying to evoke feelings of nostalgia for a culture that most people alive today were not around for. You can't protect a culture. That's not how culture works. Culture changes. Yeah, and Christians are going to mega churches these days. You're watching grifters with a 2.3 billion net worth, talk about how they can faith heal. That's what you're doing right now.
They tell others that here we do things our way.
I don't know what this means. So the idea of a national border is to say here we do things our way. Well, yeah, that's true, right? Once you pass over the border and you enter America, you follow a different set of laws. That's true, right? Like that's the case. But that's not because of that's what happens when you enter a new country.
Without borders, we'd be in a world of chaos.
Another thing that makes this video nonsensical is the fact that it juxtaposes two positions, borders versus no borders. America has a border by definition. What does it mean for a nation state to have no border? That doesn't make any sense. If you don't have a border, you don't have a nation state. Not in this like deterministic Nazi-esque, the only way to maintain a culture is to protect it kind of way. But how do you have a state without a jurisdiction of the state? It doesn't make any sense. Like, by definition, a state has to have jurisdiction, and the border is just the area of the perimeter of the jurisdiction. That's what that means. If it doesn't have a border, that would imply the whole planet is the one state, right? America has a border either way. This is another, like, nonsensical fear-mongering argument that the right wing takes. The idea that there's any possibility whatsoever that America might not have a border. That's not even a position on the table. What they're talking about is whether or not America has like high or low or no levels of immigration, you know? But conflating that with whether or not there's a border, it makes no sense. As long as America as a concept exists, it has to have a distinct jurisdiction and like a contiguous border. The video assumes the viewer thinks a border is a literal physical boundary. Yeah, that's because like the average person who watches this video and agrees with it is stupid. Like genuinely low IQ. Like they're probably less educated. They're probably very motivated by fear. Those parts of the brain are like inflated in their heads. They have a more like a pronounced fear and disgust response. They're weak, essentially. Weak men, I might say. But like there's always been a border, you know? What chaos.
Where nobody's safe to simply live in peace.
How? What does that... see, again, there's like no policy position. So what does it mean, no border? There is, by definition, a border. So what do you mean no border means that we're at like record low crime levels right now? What do you mean? What does that mean? What does no border look like?
They're the rules of the game. The boundaries that allow us to coexist without turning the whole world into a free-for-all where might makes right and the...
Okay. this doesn't really have anything to do with a free-for-all or might makes right. It's just nation states as a system of governance have borders. There's no alternative to this outside of the dissolution of the nation state, which nobody right now is attempting to do. There's no legitimate political effort to dissolve all nation states right now. That's not a real thing.
The only rule is finders keepers. Now ask yourself, why exactly would
Also, the only rule is finders keeper. It's just fear response shit, man.
anyone want to open the borders that protect our very way of life?
Okay, see this. So here's when the dog whistle is given some more structure. Okay.
Now ask yourself, why exactly would anyone want to open the borders that protect our very way of life?
What do you mean open the border? Wouldn't opening the border imply there is a border? So opening a border. First of all, I like the implication that a border is a wall. That's not how borders work. Second of all, I thought the position was border versus no border. If you can open a border, the border still exists. Like, a border that is open is still a border. And what does it mean for a border to be open? People have been able to immigrate into the United States for as long as the United States has been around. Also, immigrants commit less violent crime on average than domestic citizens. Also, if you're worried about new people entering the country, you do that already. People already do that without immigration through the birth canals of mothers. Also, isn't there rhetoric that the border's already open? Yeah, none of it makes any sense. It doesn't mean anything. Oh, we don't want new people entering the country. Okay, keep mothers from giving birth. Oh, well, we don't want foreigners entering the country. First of all, they have for the entire history of the United States, and a lot of what we consider quintessentially American today is a product of that immigration. Second of all, those kids that you're giving birth to, culturally, they're going to be very different to you. You know how in the like super ethnically homogenous white suburbs, you still have kids who are born to like traditional Midwestern families, and then the kids grow up listening to like, I don't know, metal music, and they start wearing short sleeve t-shirts over long sleeve t-shirts, and they act totally different from their parents. It's almost like culture changes, like whether or not you bring in new people, you know? Yeah, the Midwestern emo or whatever. It's the assumption that culture is something that you can protect, the assumption that culture is ethnically determined. It's Nazi shit. It's all Nazi shit. It doesn't make any sense. There's no logical argument here. It's just fear, 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 fear.
Who exactly would want millions and millions of...
Get it? It's Kamala Harris. See? That looks like Kamala Harris's hair. It's like communism, and Kamala Harris is communist.
Strangers who don't speak our language or share our values, wandering our homeland.
I don't share values with many Americans, neither do Republicans. Republicans definitionally don't share their values with a lot of Americans because they're not that popular culturally, which is why they keep losing cultural victories. So can a country only exist with people who share the same values? There's not a country on earth that exists then. Migrant crime, a very real thing. I like how it's copyrighted here, almost like even in the AI ad, it was like, oh, this is a term that has been employed by the Republicans to serve a political purpose and not an organic reference to a real phenomena.
Our language or share our values, wandering our homeland.
Wandering our homeland. That's what immigration leads to, folks. They wander your homeland. I thought your home was defined by the walls of your house. Now your homeland is the entire United States of America, one of the largest countries on earth? That's crazy.
The answer is those who seek to destroy our way of life.
That's so true, man. That's so true. Everyone who disagrees with you is Satan. Yep.
For the love of God, don't give them that power. Vote for President Trump and ensure...
I like how they missed the ballot. See?
Trump and ensure that our beloved America... land of the free and home of the brave.
Wait, hold on a second. But American culture has changed since the time of the presidents who are not faithfully depicted in this, I might add, enshrined on Mount Rushmore. If culture is different now to how it was then,
but America,
is this the same
land
America?
Of the free and home of the brave survives.
The delay meme team, that's great. I like how every piece of culture and art produced by partisanly Trump people are from either like Nazi friend posters or the cringiest motherfuckers alive, and they all use meme in their name, you know? It's like Elon Musk's type stuff. where he names his cars sexy and is like, Meat Street. That'd be even funnier if it was called Meme Street. Anyway, it got reposted by Trump, so, what are you going to do?